My wife's family saw me as trash until I got rich. Then they tried to destroy the prenup. I played one card that shut them down completely. They came for my money. I left them with nothing. I, 34M, never thought I'd be writing this, but after everything that happened, I need to get this off my chest. 5 years ago, I was nobody in my wife's family's eyes. Today, they're all scrambling to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, and honestly, I'm not sure I feel sorry for them anymore. When I married Sarah 7 years ago, I was a struggling software developer making barely $40,000 a year. Her family made it crystal clear from day one that I wasn't good enough for their precious daughter. Her father owned a successful construction company. Her mother came from old money, and her brother was a hotshot lawyer. They treated me like I was some kind of parasite who had somehow tricked their daughter into marriage. The wedding was a nightmare. Her parents insisted on paying for everything, which meant I had no say in any decisions. They seated my family at the back tables, made snide comments about my suit being off the rack, and her father actually told people at the reception that he gave our marriage 2 years max. Sarah always defended them, saying they just needed time to warm up to me. But they never did. Every family gathering was torture. Her mother would ask when I planned to get a real job. Her father would make jokes about how Sarah was supporting a deadbeat. Her brother would lecture me about financial responsibility while flashing his Rolex. They never missed an opportunity to remind me that I didn't belong. The breaking point came 3 years into our marriage. Sarah's grandmother passed away and left her a substantial inheritance. During the reading of the will, her father suggested that Sarah should consider protecting her assets. He looked directly at me when he said it. That's when they pressured her into asking me to sign a postnuptial agreement. I was devastated. Sarah approached me nervously one evening, explaining that her family was concerned about protecting the inheritance. She assured me it was just a formality, that it wouldn't change anything between us. But I knew what it really meant. Her family had finally found a way to legally declare that I was a gold digger. I signed it anyway. What choice did I have? I loved Sarah, and fighting it would have just proven their point. The agreement was brutal, though. If we divorced, I would get nothing from her inheritance or any assets acquired during the marriage. Her brother had drafted it himself, making sure every loophole was closed. That same year, I started working on a mobile app in my spare time. It was a simple productivity tool, nothing revolutionary, but I poured everything into it. Sarah was supportive, even though her family rolled their eyes whenever it came up. Her father once asked if I was planning to become the next Mark Zuckerberg, and the whole table erupted in laughter. 2 years later, everything changed. A major tech company acquired my app for $12 million. Overnight, I went from being the family disappointment to someone they suddenly wanted to know. The transformation was sickening to watch. Sarah's mother started inviting me to lunch, asking about my investment strategies. Her father began introducing me as his son-in-law, the entrepreneur, at his business events. Her brother suddenly wanted to discuss business opportunities and kept hinting about needing startup capital for his own ventures. But I wasn't the same naive guy who had signed that postnuptial agreement. I had learned to see people for who they really were. I started paying attention to how they talked about money, how they treated service workers, how they behaved when they thought no one important was watching. The real shock came 6 months after the acquisition. Sarah sat me down and explained that her family's lawyer had been reviewing our postnuptial agreement. They had discovered that while it protected her assets from me, it didn't protect my new wealth from her. In case of divorce, she would be entitled to half of everything I had earned. Her brother had made a critical error in the original agreement. He had been so focused on protecting their family money that he had inadvertently created a situation where Sarah could claim half of my assets. The irony was beautiful. Sarah told me her family wanted to renegotiate the agreement to make it more fair. They suggested we should both keep what we brought into the marriage and split anything acquired together going forward. She presented it as a gesture of good faith, but I could see right through it. I told Sarah I needed time to think about it. That night, I called my own lawyer and had him review the original agreement. He confirmed what I already suspected. The document was ironclad in their favor, but it worked both ways. If Sarah filed for divorce, she could potentially walk away with $6 million of my money. But here's what her family didn't know. I had been documenting everything for years. Every snide comment, every humiliation, every time they had treated me like garbage. I had emails, text messages, and even some recordings from family gatherings where they openly discussed how to get rid of me. More importantly, I had discovered something interesting about her brother's law practice. While researching lawyers for my own representation, I found out he had been involved in some questionable dealings. Nothing criminal, but definitely unethical. He had been overcharging clients and had several complaints filed against him with the state bar. I also learned that her father's construction company was in serious financial trouble. He had been bidding too low on contracts and had several projects that were hemorrhaging money. The family's wealth was mostly an illusion maintained by credit and Sarah's inheritance. That's when I decided to play my card. I scheduled a family dinner and told them I had made a decision about the postnuptial agreement. They all gathered at Sarah's parents' house, probably expecting me to roll over like I always had. Her father was practically rubbing his hands together with anticipation. I started by thanking them for helping me understand the importance of protecting assets in a marriage. I told them their original agreement had taught me valuable lessons about family loyalty and trust. Sarah looked confused, but her parents were nodding along, thinking I was about to make their lives easier. Then I dropped the bomb. I told them I had decided not to renegotiate the agreement. In fact, I was so grateful for their legal expertise that I wanted to make sure everyone understood exactly what the current agreement meant. I pulled out copies of the original document and walked them through it line by line. I explained how Sarah would be entitled to half of my assets if we divorced, just as I would get nothing from her inheritance. I watched the color drain from her father's face as he realized what his son had done. But I wasn't finished. I told them I had been thinking about our marriage lately and whether we were truly compatible. I mentioned that I had been feeling unappreciated and wondered if Sarah might be happier with someone from her own social class. The room went dead silent. Sarah's mother started stammering about how much they all loved me now. Her father began backtracking, saying they had always seen my potential. Her brother looked like he was going to be sick. I let them squirm for a few minutes before delivering the final blow. I told them I knew about her brother's professional problems and her father's business troubles. I explained that I had been considering making some investments in the family, but recent events had made me reconsider. Sarah's father asked what I meant by recent events. I told them about the private investigator I had hired to look into the family's finances. I had wanted to understand their business operations before potentially investing, but what I found was concerning. The investigator had uncovered her father's financial problems, her brother's ethical violations, and even some interesting information about her mother's spending habits. I had documentation of everything, and I made it clear that I was prepared to use it if necessary. I told them I was willing to keep this information private, but only if they agreed to certain conditions. First, they would never again suggest renegotiating our postnuptial agreement. Second, they would treat me with the same respect they showed other family members. Third, they would stop interfering in my marriage. If they violated any of these conditions, I would not only file for divorce and take half of Sarah's inheritance, but I would also make sure her brother's professional misconduct became public knowledge and her father's business problems were exposed to his clients and creditors. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Sarah looked shocked, but I could see a hint of admiration in her eyes. Her family had finally met someone who could play their game better than they could. Her father was the first to speak. He asked what I wanted from them going forward. I told him I didn't want anything except to be treated like family. I explained that I had never cared about their money, but I was tired of being disrespected in my own marriage. Sarah's mother started crying, apologizing for how they had treated me. Her brother mumbled something about misunderstanding my character. Her father actually stood up and shook my hand, welcoming me to the family properly for the first time. But the real test came over the following months. True to their word, they never mentioned the postnuptial agreement again. Family gatherings became pleasant affairs where I was included in conversations and treated as an equal. Sarah's father even started asking for my business advice, and her mother began inviting me to social events without Sarah. The most satisfying moment came 6 months later when her brother's law practice finally collapsed under the weight of his poor decisions. He came to me asking for a loan to start over. I politely declined, explaining that I didn't think it would be a good investment. He accepted my decision without argument, which told me everything I needed to know about how much the power dynamic had shifted. Sarah and I are still married, and our relationship is stronger than ever. She told me later that she had always known her family was wrong about me, but she hadn't known how to stand up to them. Seeing me handle the situation with such precision had made her proud to be my wife. The funny thing is, I probably would have renegotiated the postnuptial agreement if they had approached me with respect and honesty. I never cared about Sarah's inheritance money, but their assumption that I was still the same pushover they had bullied for years was their fatal mistake. Her father's construction company eventually went bankrupt, and her mother had to sell most of her jewelry to pay off debts. They never asked me for help, which I respected. They had learned that respect is a two-way street, and they were finally treating me like family instead of an outsider. Looking back, I realized that signing that original postnuptial agreement was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me that sometimes you have to let people think they've won before you can show them how wrong they were. Her family thought they were protecting themselves from me, but they had actually handed me the keys to their destruction. The irony is that I never wanted to destroy them. I just wanted them to see me as a human being worthy of basic respect. Once they learned that lesson, everything else fell into place. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be the victim anymore and showing people exactly what they stand to lose. Today, we have a functional family relationship built on mutual respect rather than condescension. They learned that money doesn't make you better than other people, and I learned that sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from everything to get what you really want. In the end, we all got exactly what we deserved.